Welcome to Truck Tech. I'm Thomas Watson. This is our third episode, and for today, we're going to be talking about the electric medium duty space. Electric trucks are not only the Class 8 ones you see on the road, but they're also innovating all across the board. And we're going to be speaking with the folks at Harbinger. They're going to be, they recently announced a Series B. It was $100 million, have tons of order books, a lot of great information here. They've been making some moves. 2025 has been busy, keeping me busy as well. So we're off to the races. And speaking of which, let's introduce their co-founder and CEO, John Harris. John, it's a pleasure to get to talk to you. Y'all have started the year off with a bang.
Well, thanks for having us on, Thomas.
And tell us a little bit about what Harbinger is and a little bit about the history of the company for folks who aren't familiar.
So we started Harbinger to solve a very specific, pretty narrow problem, which is how do we build the best medium-duty truck? And we happen to think that the best medium-duty truck is electric, so that's the approach we've been using. But the point is really to be very focused on medium-duty. We've seen that this is a segment that doesn't really get any attention these days. Big automakers are really focused on larger markets, either in Class 8 or Class 1. And so the medium duty market has just been sort of languishing with decades-old technology and pretty unpleasant driver experience that we think we can improve.
Yeah, and I always wondered, is that kind of because you just make more money in the Class 8 or Class 1, or is it something, because I mean, medium duty, from what I understand, can be anything from garbage trucks, ambulances, delivery vehicles, there's a whole spectrum of in the logistics and supply chain that these trucks are operating in.
Yeah, so that mix is part of what makes it a little bit challenging for some of those bigger automakers. If you think about buying a Cascadia, every Cascadia is pretty much the same, right? You can change the paint color. There's some options to pick from, but they're not making Cascadias in like different vehicle widths and with different numbers of doors. But that's very common for medium-duty vehicles. So the big truck OEMs tend to focus on that Class 8 market because the vehicles are more expensive and like I said, it's a lower mix, so they can build more of the same profitable item over and over again. And then the kind of biggest global OEMs are really focused on the passenger car market because it's a huge market. The passenger car market, I believe right now, is about 70 million vehicles a year, around 11 million vehicles a year in the U.S. versus the medium-duty market, which is about 400,000 vehicles a year.
Yeah. And they got to have a lot of different roles, modularity, different lengths and widths. Tell us about what makes the Harbinger one special, because I was reading through some releases talking about a specific way of how you're manufacturing it, a way to make it, specifically designed to handle the EV stuff compared to others. Let's go into that.
So the thing that really makes our vehicle special is that we built the whole vehicle here from scratch just to be a medium-duty vehicle. And that sounds obvious, but if we go out and look at most medium-duty vehicles, we're going to find two things. One is that nothing was built from scratch. There's very little content on most medium-duty vehicles today that was really built for that vehicle. There's a lot of carryover from sort of peripheral vehicle classes. So if we look at a Ford medium-duty vehicle, they've probably brought some of the engines in from more like an F-250 or an F-350, where they're doing higher volumes and making bigger investments. If we look at Freightliner medium-duty vehicles, you're going to see axles, suspension systems carried down from Class 7. And so you're just going to end up, in most cases, with a vehicle that isn't really designed for what you're trying to sell it for. You're either going to be heavier than you want to be, it's not going to have the durability, or it's just going to be really uncomfortable. When we look at most medium-duty vehicles on the road in North America, they've got a solid front steer axle with leaf springs. And that's, that was cutting edge in 1920. It's kind of amazing to me that for vehicles that are being driven, day over day on surface roads, doing a lot of critical activities for us, delivering our packages, that's the best we can do for those drivers. So it's not like we have to come in and reinvent the wheel. We're just bringing in technology that's become commonplace in the last 30 years in the passenger car segment. and bringing it up to a market where no one's really been making an effort.
And the big thing I see with EVs is battery packs. It's one of the big concerns, big challenges, especially in the Class 8 space. Right now, it's kind of like Goldilocks, too heavy, too short, can't go. In the medium vehicle space, the requirements and weights and ranges are a lot different. Let's talk about how not only are you redoing the chassis to make it bring it into the 21st century. I can't believe the springs, by the way. I'm thinking of the World War One and the old vehicles bobbling up and down. Tell us about that. How do you tackle not only bringing it in, but making sure that the EV and the battery stuff works? Because that's the biggest thing I hear is battery pack, battery pack, battery pack.
So the most important part for the battery pack is kind of the same theme, making sure we've got the right battery pack for this specific vehicle class. Battery packs are hard item to buy. There are only a couple suppliers globally that build and sell battery packs to other OEMs. So you've got the issue of buying something off the shelf and sort of making it work for your application. So today, probably 80% of electric trucks on the road use battery packs from Kettle, and they all use this same battery pack. So you've got the same exact battery pack going into a refuse truck, a long haul truck, a medium duty truck, a class 2 van. Like, think about those vehicles. They have wildly different needs. The frames are different, the packaging constraints are different, the vehicle life is different, and they've all got the same battery pack. So by definition, most of those vehicles have the wrong battery pack. So we work from the cell level up. We're always looking to be a commodity buyer. So cells are that commodity. We buy a 2170 cylindrical cell, which is become really the industry standard for the newer generation of automakers. And then we build the battery modules and the battery packs in-house. And we build those packs designed to be perfectly matched to our chassis. So when you look at a Harbinger electric vehicle, the battery packs fit completely in the frame. They're protected in the y-axis from a side impact. They don't hang out from the frame, and most importantly, they don't hang below the frame. So even in the z-axis, we build vehicles on a ladder frame, so you've got the sort of two C-channel frames. The battery packs fill in this space here. So if you high center the vehicle, you high center it on the frame, and you don't damage the battery packs.
Well, it's a big deal, especially because if the battery itself combusts and you don't have your pack properly secured, then that brings in quite, the making sure that the safety and everything works. Who was the supplier for 80%? So y'all make them in house, you custom mold it. Who's the big supplier that everyone's using?
CATL.
CATL. Holy cow. It's one of those names I'm still learning in the research area, but it's a strange thought to understand that most of these makers are like, all right, whatever, I'm just going to go with whoever else everyone else is using. And then you have it sitting out along the edges. And then that you may have too much battery or too little battery, right?
Yeah, I mean, you either, everyone else is putting batteries in one of two places. They're putting it outboard of the frame in a saddlebag configuration, or they're putting it in frame, but it's too high, so it sticks out the bottom. So you don't have the battery pack that fits in the right spot, so you kind of have to stick it wherever you want it. And then usually you don't end up with battery packs that have the right capacity. If you think about trying to customize the amount of battery pack, you want the right size building block so that I can give two different customers two different battery pack configurations. And ideally, neither of them is buying too much or too little. They're getting just what they want. So we have to make our battery packs kind of just the right size so that the incremental change we can make customer by customer is small enough to match their needs precisely.
And when we're specking it out, what is, I know for the Class 8 sector that I'm more familiar with, you want to be like around 500 miles. That's kind of my range. I want to make sure I can haul. I know you can get 2,000 extra pounds on gross weights. If I'm specking for a medium duty one, I'm not going to be going that far. What's kind of the standard? Is there a standard for the medium duty space, like that sweet spot that folks are trying to spec out for battery electric?
So in the US, about 75% of vehicles or more in medium duty are doing 60 to 70 miles a day. Sorry, they're doing less than 70 miles a day. There's a long distribution, right? A lot of them are only doing 20 miles a day. So that's your typical usage, around 70 miles. The question of what the right amount of battery pack is for that is much more debatable fleet by fleet. Some people will say, "Oh, I'm going to go 70 miles today, therefore I want 210 miles of battery. I only want to charge a couple days a week." Some people will say, "Well, I want the absolute lowest cost vehicle I can get. I'm going to go with 80 miles of battery." So both of those are kind of an extreme version. We generally think that about 125 miles of range is probably the right number for most medium duty vehicles.
And then like you can charge it because I'm assuming for the operational aspect, I get enough range that I complete my shift. I take it back to the depot, plug it in and charge, and I come back tomorrow and make sure, hey, we're good to go. Unless you're slip seating or something.
Yeah, that's exactly the right operating tempo for these vehicles. The vast majority of medium duty vehicles are single shift, so you've got 12 hours of downtime to charge the vehicle. You might as well use all of it, right? You want to buy the smallest charger you can get. You want to put that energy into the vehicle as slowly as you can, so you pay the smallest demand charges to your utility company. When we've got these vehicles that are only used half the time, we want to stretch that charging out and help those operators save money on really every piece of that decision making.
Well, looking at the price point as well, that's one of the other concerns. Especially, we can dive into the policy headwind potentials later, but having that customization means that you're able to tailor the cost more, right? Because I know that right now, currently with the technology and everything, EVs are more expensive. But given how you're able to adjust it with your frame, is that something where the cost parity with a Harbinger vehicle is going to be a lot better compared to just a traditional electric EV that's using a cookie cutter build, so you can't really shave off a lot?
We are much more cost competitive. I don't think it's necessarily driven by that. Most people in this segment are landing around the same battery capacity. It's somewhere between 120 and 160 kilowatt hours. So we can fine tune that a little bit more, but going from 160 to 125, we're not radically changing the cost of the vehicle there. The piece that makes the much bigger difference to us is just buying those commodities rather than having a multi-layered supply chain with a lot of margin capture. So, when you think about battery packs, again, if you buy a battery pack from CATL, they kind of know they've got you, right? If you walk in the door and you're like, "Oh, I want to talk about battery packs," they would know, well, oh, you must not be able to build battery packs, so you wouldn't be here. So we're going to start with the price that we offer people who don't have any other options. And of course, you're buying a lot there, right? You're getting the battery cells, but you're getting modules and pack and BMS and cooling. You're needing to help them amortize all the tooling and the test and validation and the engineering. So what you're buying is something that's really complicated and that has fairly high margins as a result. If you think about what we're buying, the vast majority of the cost in any electric vehicle is the battery pack, and most of that cost is in the battery cell. So we're buying cells, and that's a real commodity. And we can buy battery cells from a handful of different companies. They're pretty interchangeable. We think some of them are higher quality than others, but at the end of the day, it's a very competitive market when you're selling commodities. So that ability to take the commodity and add the value in-house without giving the margin away to a large tier one allows us to deliver the end product to our customers dramatically cheaper than our competitors.
Well, let's talk about that raise because I mean that's a big deal. $100 million Series B. Right now, you have an order book of a little under 4,700 vehicle orders, around $500 million that's locked in. I mean, that's from my research. That's let's go behind the scenes on how the new round came in, and then what are y'all's plans? Because it looks like you've got some capital right now to work with. You've got the integrated in house, and then you've got orders. What are the next steps for getting that going?
So the focus of that capital is really to deploy that into increased tooling and automation to help drive the cost of our vehicles down even farther. Right now, we have the lowest cost product in this segment by a pretty broad margin, and we're priced at a level where we can compete directly with diesel, taking into account the IRA. Our next goal is to continue driving that price down even farther so that we can compete directly at acquisition cost even without the IRA.
And one of the things I was trying to find here as I was looking, we've seen a lot in the spaces, a lot of bankruptcy in the medium duty space. I saw one on Canoe. It looks like it's been a bloodbath, and I was looking up Harbinger, and you guys had a comment or a quote somewhere. It's like, we're doing like slow and steady. We're not gonna, our strategy is a lot different. For folks who haven't caught up on all the lore and the backstory, what the heck's been going on in the electric medium duty space? Because it looks like there was another one. So we had Canoe. I'm pulling it up. Proterra, Line Electric, Lordstown Motors, Electric Last Mile Solutions, Fisker, Arrival. It looks like the Academy Awards right now, where it's like, when you see at the end, those for those we lost this year, and we have Sarah McLachlan playing. Um, what's been what's been the secret to y'all's success? Because it looks like, for me playing catch up, it's a very narrower field right now than the past few years.
And this is what we expected to happen. We started the company a little under 4 years ago, and at the time, a lot of people said, "Oh, there's so many people in this segment. How are you going to compete with all these companies? They have all this SPAC money. The money fell into their lap kind of on a whim, therefore they must be spending it wisely." And the key is just staying focused. We only do one thing here. We build medium duty chassis. We don't build eVTOLs or e-bikes. We don't have a bus project. We're not building rideshare vehicles for Uber. We don't have a charging network. Like, none of the things that a lot of these companies have taken on as distractions are present at Harbinger. So we have every person at this company working on the same project, all focused entirely on getting that project or getting that product into the hands of our customers where it can have an impact. So, not taking on distractions of products, and also not trying to overbuild on capacity. We've got one factory. That's where I'm sitting today in Garden Grove, and we'll need more factories in the future. But we've seen over and over again people sort of build, one or two prototypes, and they're like, "All right, we better go build a factory for 100,000 units." There's nothing in between these two steps, and that's obviously crazy. So when you build too much capacity and then you don't use it, it's like a boat anchor on the company. If we have a factory running at 20% capacity, you're never going to make money in that factory. And this is one of the issues that the big European OEMs are struggling with right now, is they've got way too much capacity in Europe, in particular in Germany. And so it's not like, oh, well, we'll just run slower. You build a factory at a certain capacity, you've really got to run it at 80-90% of that capacity for it to be profitable, to amortize the amount of overhead and tooling and capex going into it. So we've built very modestly. We have capacity here for basically what we need to build in the next 18 months, and we'll continue to deploy new capacity every year.
Well, it's incremental. That's really fascinating. It reminds me of one of my old MBA courses, where if you build too much, it will literally sink you, because it's a big old fat goose egg if you don't have the right amount. Looking into the orders, it looks like you're well positioned right now. $200 million to date since 2021. You had the recent Series A. Looking at customers as well, Bimbo Bakeries, Thor Industries. What's the most interest you're getting right now? Because it looks like, if I'm thinking of Bimbo Bakeries, I'm thinking you're looking at their supply chain, you're doing some of their transfers and stuff, and then with the RVs. Is that something where, do you build, as you're building the platform, do they then put their stuff on top? Or when you're making it in the factory, do you also just, if I need a bread truck versus an RV, does your factory put that out there, or does yours provide the fundamentals and then they're like, all right, I'm going to get that put in?
So we just build that platform. So we build the standardized modular element of the vehicle, which for what we're building today, those are called strip chassis. So if you look at Bimbo, for example, we build a chassis, and then it goes to one of the upfitters that Bimbo works with. That upfitter puts a complete body on it, and they don't actually place it on it. They build the body on top of the chassis on their own assembly line, and then that vehicle goes out onto the road. That approach works really well for this market, because every customer has such different needs. If we try to do everything in-house, we would really end up drowning with the amount of mix that we have on the product line. So this market, people have talked a long time about how great it would be to build these electric skateboard platforms, and then you can put lots of different vehicles on them. And that's a great idea, but people keep bringing it into the wrong segment. You can imagine if I build an electric skateboard and I bring it to you in your Volkswagen, and I say, hey, why don't we build half the vehicle and you build the other half of the vehicle? Your answer is like, we're Volkswagen. Why would we possibly do that? Get out of here. So in passenger cars, no one builds vehicles like that, right? The vehicles are built in high enough volumes that the amount of standardization allows them to bring the cost down, and they don't really need those standard platforms. But in medium duty, every vehicle in the US is built like this, and it has been for decades. So what we're doing is bringing in new technology, but we're really not changing the business models in use in this segment. So these customers all expect to buy a chassis for one company and to get an upfit, a body from a different company, because they already feel strongly that, hey, we know what we need on the upfit, and we like this company and not the other one, and we want all the door handles over here and not over there. They've got very specific needs, and we don't want to come in and tell them that they're wrong or to change it. We want to supply the new technology, that new foundation, to let them bring that existing platform or that existing upfit knowledge that they have kind of into the if not the 21st century, at least the 20th century would be nice.
That's wild. I wondered how the medium duty worked because I've got a father-in-law. He did fabs for they had utility trucks, but they also ran on the rails. So they were specialized chassis that had the little rail things in the tires, but they would make those, but then somebody else would make what goes on top of it for like the actual body of the utility boxes and stuff. So for what you're doing in the medium duty segment, it's an advantage because you're not dealing with, I don't have to build the ambulance, I don't have to build the tool truck that's coming out to fix roadsides. I'm just going to provide you with this chassis, and you can deliver it to them, and they already know who to go to. They got their favorite body person that they're going to put in and spec it out. So it's kind of a little bit better than like a class 8 where a Freightliner is going to say it's all going to be me or it's going to be nobody because they have to do it end to end.
Correct. These customers, in many cases, they feel very strongly about how they want the vehicles built, because they've learned over decades that the little customizations that they have made a difference, right? They've been faster or more profitable, or they have less injuries. And so it's important that we maintain that flexibility so they can leverage all of that accumulated expertise they have.
And looking ahead at the a lot of big topics, especially new administration, we're looking in the regulatory aspect here. The conversations around credits, is that something that folks are having conversations about or concerned about? Is this something where I know with electric vehicles like cars and stuff, there's concern that the tax credits go away. Is that something a state can step in, or what's the kind of vibe right now on your end as we're hearing, these regulatory changes coming up?
There's definitely a lot of chaos. People are sort of trying to figure out what is the next 6 months going to look like. We think that people are actually focusing on the wrong part of the impact there. There's a lot of questions about the IRA, but the IRA, it's a piece of legislation. It's not something that can be revoked unilaterally. And right now, it's a pretty hard partition split on, whether people think the IRA should stay or whether it should go. But the place where that breaks down is if you're in the upper Midwest, a whole portion of this country with massive employment by the automotive industry, whether you're on the left or the right, I think your answer is going to be pretty consistent. A giant incentive package for the auto industry is good for you. And so with how thin the majority is in the House today, it's really hard for me to see the IRA going somewhere on kind of a wholesale basis. Like I have a hard time believing that the elected Republican members of the House in Michigan are going to vote to gut the auto industry. I think that they care a bit more about their constituents than that.
So that money's already been spoken for, basically. When the IRA passed, Congress basically set aside a chunk. We're going to give you some of this. So it's not like to claw it back, you'd have to pass another legislation to say, hi, just kidding, give me that stuff back.
Correct. It has to be passed in Congress to revoke that. And even if that happens tomorrow, the most important parts of the IRA are not the parts of it that are directly paid out. They are the tax incentives. And you can't change 2025 tax policy midstream in 2025. And I think most people understand that that would be crazy. We can't have everyone kind of going about their lives, companies operating, and then come in and say, actually, the tax policies that you thought were in effect for the last 6 months, we're changing them retroactively. You're not going to get that stuff anymore.
We got to wait for the annual budget, basically. Whenever we pass the large spending budgets near the end of 2025, you got to keep your ear to the ground and say, all right, what are we going to do with taxes? And are they going to try to claw this back? Because it's already been allotted for from the previous one, I think, in what, like last year, the end of 2024?
Well, so the tax policy doesn't change every year. They can make a change, and then it sort of just stays in there until they change it again. So the tax credits in the IRA, went into effect starting in 2023 for the most part, late 22 for some of them, and they generally have a window. So most of them they're good for a 10-year period. So if you can convince enough congressmen to gut the auto industry, and you can do that tomorrow, you still have until the end of the year before that tax policy changes. So, if you imagine a scenario in which that happens, right? You convince all the members of Congress in Michigan and Ohio and Wisconsin to just stick a bunch of knives in the automakers, and you kill these tax credits, and you say, all right, we've killed the tax credits. They're going to go away January 1st, 2026. Everyone's going to rush in and buy vehicles for the rest of 2025, right? They're going to say, wow, there's a $40,000 tax credit that's only available to me for the next 10 months. I'm not going to let that go by. So if that effort is made to kill this piece of legislation legislatively, I actually think it'll have a near-term stimulatory effect on EV sales, because now you put this clock on these big tax credits. So that whole area, I think it's going to be tough for the government to go down that path, because it is a very generous package. It's hard to take away benefits once you give them to people. The tariff policy, on the other hand, I think is going to change a lot, and that's because there's no legislative action needed to create new tariffs, and a lot of those tariffs are probably justified. So I don't think when, not if, Trump says, hey, we're going to a 75 or 100% tariff on Chinese battery packs, who's going to stand up and say, no, we don't think you should do that? I don't think there's anyone in Congress who's going to stand up and say, no, you're being too mean to China. Let's not have those tariffs. So that's going to really reshape the auto industry. With the vast majority of battery packs coming out of China, that's going to have a more significant impact, because that's going to have the effect of raising prices to American buyers, and that's going to slow the market growth. So for Harbinger, what we anticipate is, under this administration, the EV market is going to grow slower than it was about to grow, but Harbinger is probably going to capture a much larger market share. We have dramatically less Chinese content than any other electric vehicle OEM. And so when those tariffs go up dramatically, we go from having, let's say, a $30,000 or $40,000 price advantage over our nearest competitors to a $60,000 or $70,000 or $80,000 price advantage over those competitors. So the market as a whole, again, it'll be smaller, but we go from having a product that is a fair bit cheaper to a product that is way cheaper than everyone else, and so we think we probably end up with more of the market as a result.
So the vertical integration, because instead of relying on a fully made Chinese pack, you're just picking and choosing. So even if an item had to come from China, your exposure is much smaller, because you're like, well, I just need this. And if I can't learn to make it, then I'll just pick this and I'll make the rest and I'll fabricate the rest that I need. But at least I'm not dealing with, like you said, that markup. They know they got you. They're making it. That's very fascinating. So who would have thought that the business case of just learning to make it all yourself would become a competitive advantage in this globalized world?
But I think the most important part of being ready for that is that we don't get our battery cells from China. So that super expensive part of the vehicle, we have no exposure to China on that.
Oh man. Well, that's cool. I'm really appreciate your time as well. I know we're bumping up against time, but especially in this medium duty space, like there's a lot of stuff in there that I don't think folks are really realizing and focusing on the chassis itself and the actual kit, and then allowing them to do the rest. Like that's going to be really really fascinating. Looking ahead, final questions here before we run out of time. Big plans with the Series B, looking to scale. Is there anything else kind of on your radar, or especially in the medium duty space, that folks who are kind of outside of the thing need to be putting on their whiteboard of, I need to watch this?
Well, we'll have some exciting announcements in the next couple of months about what some of that scaling looks like. I can tell you we've got vehicles out on the road today, delivering, delivering packages, delivering bread, in the hands of our customers. And I think the other big piece to keep an eye on this year is the launch of our commercial hybrid platform. So we shared that for the first time publicly last year with Thor, and that product is coming down the pike pretty fast. So we're excited about being able to bring out a hybrid product in this platform, because we think that helps that sort of last 20% of the market where electrification isn't really a good fit on its own. It helps bring that part of the market in so they can access the more advanced technology, the better driver comfort, the better durability that we offer on these vehicles, even if they have use cases where the battery technology today wouldn't allow us to meet their needs on a purely electric basis.
It's going to be really awesome stuff. John, thanks so much for your time. Folks want to learn more about Harbinger, find out, get more information. What's the best way?
Take a look at our website on harbingermotors.com, or take a look at our social content on YouTube, LinkedIn, any of the main social channels.
Perfect. Really appreciate your time. For those of you just joining us, we're also going to be Apple, Spotify, and YouTube. While you're at it, sign up for the Truck Tech newsletter. Goes out on Fridays. And as always, you can catch Truck Tech on Wednesdays at 3 p.m. Eastern. That's a wrap for this episode. Don't worry, folks. We'll see you again soon.